Chapter 33 Debates and Interrogations. When the surviving pilots of Kelly's wolf pack returned to the marathon, they found their ship turned into something that resembled the center of a densely packed city. Most of the emergency pop tents had been replaced by prefab shelters provided by the Savanti government. The airspace around the shipwreck was crowded with Savanti starships that moved back and forth from the wreck site to the nearby colony. High above, the sky was filled with shimmering ribbons of red, orange, and yellow colors. Aboard the marathon itself, Ino and her command team were getting their hands dirty. As captain, Ino could have ordered the lower enlisted members of the crew to salvage and rebuild the comm array, but after putting them through such an intense physical trial, she decided the officers, including herself, should pull their own weight. The bridge crew, plus 50 lower enlisted crew and a dozen androids, toiled under the hot sun to gather up the shattered remains of the communications tower. Ino wanted to join in the work, but was forced to sit in the shade, holding an inventory database by Sota. "You have 2 broken limbs and your stomach is being held together by stitches. Rest," Sota said. So Ino did. As the crew brought pieces of the comms array to her, she compared them against a hastily assembled inventory sheet on a tablet computer prepared by Axiom. While the project pressed on, Ino, Sota, and Rylan talked about the bigger conundrum. "Are you sure you cannot give the cloaking generator to our colony?" Rylan asked. "I'm certain I can't," Ino said. "I asked Axiom to pull up all relevant paragraphs in the Coalition military regulations. To put it simply, I don't have the authority to enter into a diplomatic agreement with your government, and granting access to sensitive military technology to a foreign power definitely falls under diplomacy." "You don't have the authority because you're the acting commander," Sota clarified. "If he were alive, Admiral Garnet would have done it, or Captain Klein in a pinch. According to the regs, acting commanders have reduced authority until they consult with Strategic Command." "And that's why you're salvaging the comms array?" "Coalition FTL radios have built-in encoder systems that can recognize each other," Ino said. "If we tried to call Strategic Command from one of your ships, or the Colonial Government building, we might not get through. It has to be with one of our systems." "There's also the problem of Strategic Command not getting our earlier calls," Sota said. "We haven't heard from them in 2 months now." "We'll cross that bridge when we get to it," Ino said. At that moment, Prisbin, Mancini, and Axiom dropped off a long coil of fiber optic cable. Ino marked it off on the tablet computer and continued. "I still think we need a backup plan, a contingency," she said. "You have something in mind?" "I have the start of an idea," Ino said. "Rylan, hear me out on this one." Ino sat up and adjusted her leg cast with her free hand. "Your ruler wants to hide a whole colony with a cloaking device." "Fine," Ino said. "Well, the dark matter cloaking generator might be off limits, but as far as I can tell, the cloaking sails are fair game." Ino gestured to the starboard flank of the ship. The starboard cloaking sail was just barely visible, as it was still in the retracted position. "The sails just need to be hooked up to a cloaking field generator," Ino said, "and then they would project the actual cloaking field. What if the Savanti provided their own cloaking generator?" Rylan folded his arms in thought. "My people have developed cloaking technology, yes," he said. "However, we did not give it a large-scale role in our military doctrine like the Coalition or Astral Fellowship. I highly doubt there is a Savanti cloaking device on this moon. There might be one on the starbase, though." The trio looked up at the blood-red sky. The cosmic storm raging above seemed to speak for itself. Several pieces of space debris burned up in the atmosphere, adding white streaks to the image of flames high above. "Right. We're not getting up there for a few more days," Ino said. "Maybe the—" "Oh, hey, Rylan, are you okay?" Rylan had frozen in place. Acting Ensign Yamada had noticed and was waving in his face, trying to get a response. "Another over-the-air update?" Sota suggested. Rylan suddenly started moving again, causing Yamada to yelp and jump backwards. "Apologies. There's been a development in the Democratic consensus," Rylan said. 511 candidates have been mathematically eliminated from the election. "Yikes," Ino said. "How many left?" 8,291, Rylan replied. "The consensus is moving faster than in the past." "What were you saying about the cloaking sales?" Ino drummed her fingers on the tablet. "Can the Savanti build a cloaking generator of their own? Then we could supply the sales." "If we were on a habitat station, or any other colonized world, I would say yes," Rylan replied. "But this colony was established only weeks ago. No industrial centers have been set up yet, and by the time one is operational, the enemy could have arrived." "Shit," Ino breathed. Sota folded his arms. He was thinking so hard that his face turned into a mean-looking scowl. "We should figure out the risk," Sota said. "Did Sylvalin really manage to get a message out? Is anyone coming for him? Is anyone coming for us?" Ino and Rylan looked at each other, and an unspoken conversation passed between them. "With your permission," Sota said, "I could go to the Savanti Detention Center and interrogate Araj. Get some solid intel." "Take Axiom, Prisbin, and Elodie with you," Ino said. "She's down in the medical tent, and I've heard she's going to explode unless she's given something to do." "Is Elodie any good at interrogations?" Sota asked. "Ugh, good point," Ino said. "Just make sure you take the lead on all the questions. Let Elodie be the bad cop if you get stuck." "You just want her to break off Cephalin's other horn," Sota said, narrowing his eyes at Ino. "He tried to rape me," Ino replied in a very sharp tone. "I might be feeling vindictive." Sota grinned. "Well, Captain, I'll keep that in mind. Axiom, you're with me." Chief Medical Officer Zapata was starting to wonder if he was cursed. First, Ino had checked herself out of the field hospital against his orders. Now it was happening again with the leader of the Marine detachment. Reza Agdashlu, Hermione Durand, and Ashok Raval had come into the field hospital carrying a spare combat uniform and an assault rifle, expecting Elodie to leave with them. "I cannot clear this woman for duty," Zapata said. "Her lungs have taken severe damage, and she needs bed rest." Elodie instinctively tried to push herself out of bed, willing to go back on duty even if her body was not. Intense pain racked her body, but Elodie pushed through it and got to her feet. "No, absolutely not," Zapata said. That was when Sota, Prisbin, and Axiom entered the field hospital. "Lichtenstein, you're up," Sota said. "Need you to come with us." "Yes, sir," Elodie said at once. "Are you kidding me?" Zapata gasped. "I'll bring her back when we're done," Sota added. "Oh, come on," Elodie swore. Oracle Aster had kept his word. When Elodie, Sota, Axiom, and Prisbin arrived at the Savanti side of the camp, the guards posted outside of the detention center had been ordered to let the marathon crew pass. "So, I'm here to be the muscle," Elodie spoke in a raspy wheeze, as the brisk walk across camp had left her winded. "Exactly," Sota replied. "You did break one of his horns. He'll remember you." Elodie cracked her knuckles. She was very glad Sota had thought of her for this task. Savanti soldiers told them to wait while they fetched the prisoner. Axiom and Prisbin spoke to one another, then reported to Sota and Elodie. "The local Savanti authorities have just connected the Marathon's comms array with that of the Kailasha. In a few minutes, I will have access to the enemy's communication logs." Axiom said. I've already asked him to share everything with the military intelligence team, Prisbin said. Sota looked over his shoulder just in time to see a badly battered Araj being led into one of the interrogation chambers. Let him stew for a moment, Sota said. I want those comm logs before we go in there. Axiom held up a mechanical hand. I have the logs now. 1 moment, please. Elodie, Sota, and Prisbin watched. Axiom's head made subtle twitching movements as he filtered all of the new information. Before the Kailasha was captured, Zilfalin made contact with a Destican warship named Sonamoni. Sonamoni? Sota repeated, looking at Prisbin. The chief tactical officer screwed up his face as he thought. The name Sonamoni came up 3 times in the classified intelligence briefings, Prisbin said. There are 3 enemy ships with that name. A logistics vessel aiding in superweapon research, a Varuni-class battleship we saw at the Battle of Savasia 2 months ago, and a science vessel testing out an experimental jump drive. It was seen in Savanti's space around the same time the war started. Fuck, Sota said. Liechtenstein, with me. Now. The Savanti soldiers stood aside to let Sota and Elodie into the cramped little room. One of the troopers winked at the pair before closing the door behind them. Elodie was deeply satisfied to see that Araj had reacted harshly to seeing her. He tried to back away, but his hands were chained to a ring in the center of the table. This creature is yours, Araj said to Sota, gesturing at Elodie. I would try to avoid insulting a member of the Liechtenstein royal family, Sota said in a dangerous tone. You've already seen what they can do. Sota gently patted his own forehead with one hand, drawing attention to the splintered remains of Araj's left horn. I have some questions, Sota said. Just talk to me, and you won't have to worry about her. Elodie grabbed one of the chairs from the table and sat down in front of the only door. She did this partly to make Araj feel trapped, partly to make herself look intimidating, and partly because she was rapidly running out of strength. When Elodie first woke up from surgery, Zapata had warned her that her lung capacity was drastically reduced. Now she was starting to understand what he meant. Elodie took deep breaths and focused on glaring at Araj. His eyes frequently darted to Elodie while Sota spoke. One of your crew sent a coded transmission from the Kailasha shortly before he was captured, Sota was saying. I need to know the contents of that transmission, the details of the message. Araj narrowed his eyes. The only Destican words you should concern yourself with are the ones directed at you, Araj said. The natural order of things has been revealed by the cosmos. We command, you serve. There is no reason for you to know what was said between us, he said. Sota leaned forward and spoke in a slightly different voice, one that caught Elodie's attention. Elodie knew that Sota had been raised on the streets of Singapore, and that he left a life of crime behind when he joined the coalition. She was excited to get a chance to see street thug Sota suddenly emerge from the darkness like this. Sounds to me like you don't know what your underling was doing in the enigmatic encoder, Sota said. Some commander you are. Araj seethed and slammed his fists on the tabletop, causing his shackles to rattle loudly. You dare! I am the son of the novella! May he live forever! I know everything that happens aboard my ship! Sota remained calm. He had not reacted to Araj's outburst. Good, Sota said. For you, I mean. It means my friend back there will have to wait a little longer to work her magic. When I break off your other horn, I'm going to put it on display at Vadu's castle, Elodie rasped. Araj looked from Sota to Elodie and back again. You ordered your man to contact someone, Sota said. Who did you call for help? I have no reason to tell you, Araj replied, looking nervously at Elodie. She cracked her knuckles and took a series of deep breaths. Sota said. So in that case, I assume the name Sonomoni means nothing to you. Elodie saw, for a fraction of a moment, the shadow of an emotion flicker across Araj's face. Then the enemy leader sat upright in his chair. No, Araj declared. Good, Sota replied. I thought as much. Our people should have no trouble capturing a science vessel anyway. This time, Elodie was watching Araj's face carefully. She saw an unmistakable look of triumph cross his features before he suppressed it. I have nothing to say, Araj spoke coolly. I will wait here for you to come back and swear your oaths of vassalage. As soon as they were out of the cell, Sota turned to Axiom and Prisbin. It's the battleship. There is insufficient data, Axiom said. Without more testimony, we cannot draw that conclusion. Call it intuition, Sota said. Trust me, Axiom, I've been in this situation before back in Singapore. Prisbin, you said this guy had brothers? Dozens of them. He's the runt, the deviant, Sota said. I've met his kind. That bastard's got at least one bigger, stronger brother who would come running if he calls. And he knows that his brother got the message and is coming to help. That's why he's so confident. Axiom, call the Savanti leaders and arrange a meeting with Ino. Prisbin, get your team of tactical officers and start wargaming a defense of the colony. And Elodie? Yeah, she said. Just so you know, the Desticans never signed the interstellar laws of armed conflict. Same goes for the Savanti. So? Elodie asked, unable to see where Sota was going with this. So, Sota said, before I send you back to the medical tent, I'm going to turn my back and lose track of you for about 15 minutes. Elodie was so focused on trying to breathe that Sota's words went over her head. Sorry, I'm not following. Axiom tapped Elodie's shoulder. I have disabled the cameras inside of the interrogation chamber, and I will be keeping the Savanti away from the one-way glass. Sota whispered in Elodie's other ear. Has anyone told you? Araj tried to rape Ino. Suddenly, Elodie forgot about her pain. Ino and Rylan watched as a team started pulling up the guy ropes. In moments, the ramshackle antenna rose up and stood tall above the rest of the camp. With a little luck, we'll have FTL comms online by the end of the day, comms officer in Nungane panted. Good, Ino said. Tell the team to take a break. Drink some water. Rylan tied the guy ropes in place, allowing the antenna to stand on its own. Then he came back to Ino. Less than 5,000 candidates left in the election. I'm impressed at how quickly this election is moving. He picked up a cup of lemonade from a nearby hydration point and offered it to Ino. She savored the sweet taste for a moment, then asked, Are you still in the race? I am, Rylan said. My promise to encourage the Savanti diaspora to return home in exchange for high-value jobs in the reconstruction of the home world seems to have struck a nerve. Of course, this means that Savanti people living in coalition territory would need housing. I am negotiating with a few others about the issue. Are you relaxing as ordered? Before Ino could reply, a military android approached her. Word from Axiom, the android said. Destican battleship en route to our position. ETA unknown. Stand by for updates. Ino swore, jumped off the piece of wreckage she was using as a chair, spilled lemonade down her front, and screamed, "Hey! Break's over! We gotta work double time now!"
As you're on your way back home, something catch your eyes untold. Fear of darkness lingers here. You tremble as you get the fear. Now you're on the cornerstone, fearing you'd be left alone. Who will lose? Who will prevail? Who will tell the